Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for our webinar on infertility and the holidays. Before we begin, just want to go over some housekeeping. As many of you know that have joined some of our previous webinars, everyone is on mute, but if you do have any questions throughout this webinar, please feel free to enter the questions in that control panel. We like to keep the questions for the end of the presentation just to keep the flow going. And this webinar is being recorded, and I'll be sending out a copy in the next 1 to 2 days. Now, tonight, you'll be hearing from my colleague, Alicia Abdella, who is the Manager of Intended Parent Support here at Circle Surrogacy, as well as Kate Weldon Leblanc, who is Executive Director of Resolve New England. Now I'm going to hand it over to Alicia to get the webinar going. Alicia?
Thanks, Jen. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for taking the time to sit with us tonight and talk a little bit about infertility and the holidays. We're happy to be here with you and share some information, tips, and hopefully hear your questions and thoughts at the end. Our agenda is as follows: surviving the holidays, talking a little bit about why infertility is so hard, managing folks in your life around this time of year, finding support when you need it, and staying sane. We're going to hear a little bit about Resolve New England from Kate, talk a bit about coping during the holiday season, and just kind of tips and tricks that we have, and happy to share with you all. So why is infertility so hard during the holidays? And we kind of thought about a couple different reasons why, and certainly one of which would be extra time spent with family. I think for a lot of people, there is this opportunity to kind of reflect on your own family and family building. Perhaps the desire to grow your family comes up for you, and certainly, you know, when there are folks who are experiencing challenges, there's that time to reflect on that as well, and that can be quite difficult. Certainly when we spend time with family and friends, there's lots of opportunity for family members to question your plans, want to get updates. You know, spending time with people you don't see often during the year can spark those questions about your family building, and that can feel challenging to manage, especially in the moment, if you're caught off guard or not quite prepared for that. In-person gatherings, you know, we certainly see that they can promote kind of direct or unfiltered questions. When perhaps alcohol or spirits are involved. We'll talk a little bit about the impacts of COVID-19 on this year's holidays, but certainly in holidays past, I think folks have certainly seen opportunities where they are in conversation with, you know, folks at a holiday party and having more direct questions asked, maybe a bit more unfiltered than would be otherwise, and that can certainly feel challenging and a bit on the spot. And then we also thought about kind of the idea of reflecting on the year to come. I think for a lot of people, the start of a new year, their hope is that, you know, the year goes as planned, and their hopes and dreams for having the family that they have always wanted will materialize and come through. And so if that wasn't the case for you this year, having that time to reflect on the year past can be certainly tough. So for some people, the thought of continuing IVF, or maybe choosing an alternative path to parenthood may feel a bit overwhelming if you know that that's on the horizon. And so reflecting on the year past and then the year to come can feel a bit overwhelming during the holidays. So managing family and friends during the holidays, a lot about just some kind of tips and tricks that you can think about, keep in your back pocket in those circumstances where you know you're going to be getting together with folks. So coming up with a plan, you know, talking with your partner about what feels comfortable to share or not at this point in your journey. For some people that we work with, certainly at Circle, and in my private practice, you know, there are folks that I will speak with who are very open to sharing details about their journey, and for them that's very helpful. For other people, it's the opposite. They're not comfortable sharing. They don't really want to announce on a wider stage what's going on for them. It's a very private matter. And then there's folks who are, somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. But having a chance to kind of reflect and come up with what feels comfortable to you to share, either in a public space or with family and friends, can always be helpful. So you have a bit of a game plan. And then in a similar vein, having a go-to response. So kind of coming up with a quick one-liner that you can just kind of pull out as needed, either to divert conversation or, deflect a question, kind of putting a question or comment back onto the person that you're speaking with, diverting attention away from you can sometimes be helpful. If the exchange really becomes too overwhelming and you're not quite sure what you want to say, or you were caught off guard by the question that's asked, that can often be helpful. And this can also be a conversation that you can have with a partner, that each of you kind of has your go-to, or if your partner hears you, kind of give that one line, or they know to come in and kind of come to your side and jump into the conversation to help out if you feel like that would be useful. Similarly, creating an escape clause. So what circumstances, either in a conversation or in a gathering, would lead you to say, I'm going to call it a night? Is it a pregnancy announcement? Is it somebody going on and on about their kids, or a gathering where there are babies or children? For a lot of people, this is a trigger for them, and it can be difficult at any time of the year, but especially during the holidays, it can be tough. So, kind of checking in with yourself to determine what feels comfortable or not, and then making a plan around that decision early on before you arrive at the gathering. And then lastly, impacts of COVID-19 on holidays. We know this year is probably going to be very different for all of us. So we anticipate some isolation versus prior years when, we'd be getting together with lots of different groups of people, work gatherings, family and friend gatherings. So while there may be opportunities to bypass some of the direct inquiries that you would get with folks in person, on the back end of that, perhaps there's some isolation, and that's also very difficult, especially going back to that kind of previous set of remarks in the slide about reflecting back on the family that you had hoped would have materialized through the year, and didn't. So again, checking in with yourself, kind of checking in on what you need to kind of make a game plan. Finding support and staying sane during the holidays. So again, some kind of tips and tricks to think about. Again, listening to your needs in the moment. What is it that is going to be most useful to you? Is it skipping out on a family Zoom call and just hanging out at home? Is that going to be more beneficial to you than being on a call with 20 people and, having lots of questions, comments, busyness abound? Or would you find that maybe being with other people and kind of getting out and about would be helpful? Again, listening to what you need in the moment and really sticking with that. Scheduling activities that are fun and exciting and something to look forward to. Even coming up with a list and putting it somewhere, where you and your partner, or you can share it with friends, and you just kind of pick from that list. So you don't have to come up in the moment with an idea of something to do. You already brainstormed and wrote down a list of things that you'd like to do or places you'd like to go, a scenic drive, holiday lights, some kind of outdoor hike or exercise, ice skating, anything that really takes advantage of the season that we're in. And then lastly, staying connected to those who understand. So I know Kate will talk a little bit about support groups that Resolve offers. Great way to connect with other people who are going through a similar struggle. scheduling calls or meetups with family or friends who are supportive, good listeners. You feel comfortable chatting with them, and they know a little bit about what's going on for you and can be helpful to you during this time.
Thank you, Alicia. Well, that was a good transition to my part of this presentation, which is just you were kind enough to mention the importance of support groups and other supportive people in your life. And obviously, I could not agree more. And Resolve New England is an independent nonprofit organization, and we are dedicated to anyone in New England that is struggling with fertility and family building. And we provide emotional support, information, and advocacy. And we are very happy to do that. And the National Resolve organization is a separate organization, but obviously we partner with them a great deal. And one thing that we love about their great website, which is resolve.org, is that you can search by your zip code and it will tell you what the nearest support group is to you. And they include our groups in that search, again, even though we are separate organizations. But because we partner so much, they're kind enough to include our groups as well. And of course, our groups since March have been meeting virtually. And actually, that's been going great. I mean, of course, all of us have become very comfortable with Zoom and other platforms like that. A lot of people actually have been saying that even though many of us miss that in person peer support group model that I feel is really the cornerstone of our work, it's very convenient and cozy to be at home and be able to do a support group. But the key part of it is exactly what Alicia said, which is just finding those people that just get it. You barely have to, say the words, and you just know everyone else on the Zoom call is nodding enthusiastically and they just get it. And that is just so powerful. So, next slide. So I probably don't need to say this to anyone on this call, but I always try in almost every presentation to share this quote or this definition or one like it, which is just to remind people that infertility is not an inconvenience and fertility is not a luxury. When you are challenged to build your family, it is a disease of the reproductive system. And we do so much advocacy that obviously, from an advocacy perspective, it's something that we believe should be covered by insurance so much more than it is right now. And this isn't just us saying this, world renowned organizations from across the world and around the country. This quote here is from the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, but the World Health Organization, many others, American Medical Association, they all agree that infertility is a disease and should be treated as such. And as Alicia said, sometimes people are focused on the physical challenges that can arise from having to go through fertility treatment. And many of those things are not pleasant, certainly, but I know in our experience, we hear the most about the emotional struggles of trying to build and grow your family. That is actually what is sometimes the most challenging of all. And that's why it can be so difficult emotionally anytime that you're struggling, but particularly sometimes it is amplified during the holiday season. If it's not, that is great, because I don't ever want people to think they should feel a certain way, because your feelings are your feelings and they are what they are. So if you're not feeling particularly challenged by the holiday season, I think that's great. And if you are, I think that's very normal as well. So, of course, there's no right or wrong with any emotions, but we know, generally speaking, that holidays like this holiday season can be triggering, and other days of the year, like birthdays and Mother's Day and Father's Day, things like that. So, next slide, please. So, as Alicia said, this can really be a time where those feelings of isolation, sadness, jealousy, frustration, lack of control, all those feelings that are so unfortunately common during family building struggles are just even more so in the holiday season. And I feel a lot of those feelings have been amplified all year because of the very, very difficult 2020 that we have all been experiencing. So, as both of us mentioned, connecting with others who understand is so critical. And then also, I think trying to create new holiday traditions. I am hesitant to say that there's anything positive about this challenging pandemic that we are all going through. But one thing is that I do feel, as Alicia said, that maybe it does give you a perfect excuse to start a new tradition with maybe just your partner or a really small group of loved ones. And if anyone kind of questions it, you can just say you're being responsible with social distancing. But that, hopefully you maybe don't have to deal with some of those persistent inquiries that you can get at larger family gatherings. And so I think it might be a great opportunity to start some of those new traditions like Alicia suggested, and that maybe the pandemic does in a way give you a cover for doing that. Next slide. So I think that's it for us formally, but we of course definitely want to answer your questions. And one thing I just wanted to add is that, as Alicia said, sometimes the turn of a new year is definitely a time where it can create sadness because of things that maybe you didn't achieve this year that you thought you would, and also that you may be thinking ahead to different paths to parenthood in the year ahead, or a different type of fertility treatment if that's where you're going. And so obviously both of our organizations can absolutely help you navigate all of those different potential paths. And we have, from an educational perspective, we have a lot of content related to shifting gears and moving in a different direction with your family building. We also have support groups that are specifically focused on different aspects of family building. For example, if you're considering egg donation, but you're uncertain or struggling with the emotions of making that choice or going in that direction, we have a group specifically focused on that, which again, of course, is meeting virtually right now. And all of our groups are free right now, which is really great. So I just shared some resources here. Obviously, we would love to connect with you on social media. And our website is resolvenewengland.org. I mentioned National Resolve's website is very good, resolve.org. I also love the website that is for National Infertility Awareness Week, which is infertilityawareness.org. Infertility Awareness Week is not till April, but that website I feel like has great resources anytime. And then reproductivefacts.org is ASRM's website that's more patient oriented.
Thanks, Kate, for sharing those great resources. I agree. I love reproductivefacts.org. I always guide folks to that site when they have kind of general questions about treatment or treatment options or pathways, and then also just kind of like general information. I think it's great. So I'm looking for questions. I don't see any questions quite yet. So please feel free, if there's something that you're curious about, specific question you want to ask us, topic that's on your mind, we're more than happy to take a bit of time and wait for those to come in.
Yeah, we would love your questions. I'll just share while we're waiting. When I was going through fertility treatment, one of my IVF cycles was right around Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving typically is my favorite holiday. I love the coziness of it, and the food and the football and everything. And so the combination of typically loving it and also going through fertility treatment at the same time, I just remember being extremely challenging. And so I had to go that morning of Thanksgiving, had to go in for just the routine monitoring and blood tests related to IVF. And so I was already feeling kind of like sorry for myself. And then the nurse missed my vein, and had to try again, and I was getting like instantly bruised and everything. And so I just burst into tears. And I think the nurse thought that she had hurt me. And I mean, she felt terrible, and I didn't want her to feel terrible, but it wasn't enjoyable physically, but it was the pain I was feeling was emotional. And it was just like, obviously, here's this holiday that's supposed to be about gratitude, and I felt the furthest thing from grateful. I felt actually extremely bitter that I was going through this, and we were going through this. And so I just share that to say that that was many years ago now, and it's just like I remember it like yesterday. Just talking about it, it gives me that feeling in the pit of my stomach again. Um, and so I just wanted people to know that I really think it's normal to feel this way at any time of the year. Like I said, sometimes the holiday season, the busyness of it can be great and is like a great distraction. And then a random Wednesday is like extremely challenging. So I think, with so many things related to family building struggles, there's no guarantee that something will be hard or that something will be easy. You just never know, which is, I think, one of the hardest and most maddening parts about it. We hear from people all the time that just have such a hard time dealing with, you know, sometimes like on paper, you should be successful. You've done everything you can, and you know whatever it may be, the outlook looked great, and then you get this negative result, and it kind of does challenge our sense of fairness and our expectation for what will happen when you work hard enough. And with this, it's like wanting it and working hard for it, as we all unfortunately know all too well, does not result necessarily in the outcome we want. But I think all we can do is feel what we feel, and also, though, use some of these strategies just to keep moving forward. And one thing you will, I think, never hear any of us from Resolve New England say is, well, two things. We will never say don't give up, because I think that could be the subject of a whole nother webinar, but we never say don't give up, because that is a really loaded thing to say, in our opinion. But, we also, what was the other what was the other thing we'll never say? I think just like sort of like be positive, think positively. Obviously, I think optimism can be a great thing, but I never like that when we tell people what to feel, that that's impossible to achieve. And like I said, this cycle that was over Thanksgiving, I was the most negative I had ever been in all my years of trying, and I just really believed it wasn't going to work, and was had a very negative emotional attitude the whole time. And that's been my one and only successful IVF cycle. So I kid with some people that gave me the feeling that thinking negatively could be a good thing. um, so there's really no right or wrong in terms of how you feel, but I love the strategies that Alicia shared tonight about how you can just make choices that can just help you feel the best you can. And they won't always work, but I think more often than not, you'll be glad that you tried and took these positive steps to enjoy the holiday season.
I think you're totally right, Kate. I think hearing all that, I think it's just important to note, like, there's room for all sorts of feelings, right? There's room for optimism, there's room for negativity, there's room for everything in between. And so, sometimes the strategies will work and sometimes they won't, and sometimes you'll want to apply them and sometimes you won't, and that's okay. But it can never hurt to just have kind of a repertoire and just, a list to tap into in the moment when you need it. So you don't really have to think about it. You just kind of go, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's great just to know that it's handy in there. And, the ability, I think, to connect with other people who, you know, have walked or are walking on the same path or a similar path as you, can be incredibly powerful and validating. I think especially in a time during the year when there's such an emphasis on family and togetherness and different generations coming together, I think, you know, I hear from a lot of people that it, you know, it can be, like you said, Kate, it certainly doesn't have to be, but it can be, you know, a lonely time. And so being around people who kind of understand that sentiment and are walking that path as you are, can just be really powerful. So I hope that hearing some of this and kind of knowing that there are resources out there, is empowering and, you know, gives you all the opportunity to kind of connect with other people who are in a similar spot and want to hear what you have to say and can validate what you're hearing and experiencing.
Absolutely. Well, I've loved being with you tonight, my friend Alicia.
I know. This is such a treat. Oh, and we have a question. Let me see. Um, is there a group for couples considering getting an egg donor and discussing things around that? I'm going to say yes, because I know that to be true. And I will let Kate share more of the details about this.
Yes, yeah. Well, thank you for asking that. We actually have sort of two of our peer support groups that are focused on donor conception. One, as I mentioned, is really when you're kind of considering donor egg and maybe just working through kind of the emotions of that, and maybe it wasn't the path that you were expecting. So I think there's a lot of emotions related to that. And then the other group is even after you have decided, or if that's what's been clinically recommended to you, either donor sperm or donor egg or donor embryo, then we still have a support group to kind of work through the emotions of that. And so anyone is very welcome at either or both of those groups. And sometimes, you know, people uh, attend both of those groups sort of simultaneously, because kind of deciding and starting to go on that path are sometimes very close together. So we're not strict about that. It's whatever resonates with you. And the donor conception support group that I mentioned is typically led by a couple who went through donor conception. So that's nice to have. It's a different sex couple typically, but it is nice to get their different perspectives. And not that this was your question, but I just wanted to add that we now have Resolve New England has a peer-led support group that's for men only, and that it actually met tonight and now meets once a month, and it is led by a wonderful man who went through male fertility challenges himself, and is a great down to earth guy. And so we're really looking forward to having that group where just the guys can chat, because men are welcome at all of our groups and many do participate, but this one is just for guys, and we think that will be really cool.
That's awesome, Kate. I'm excited about that one.
Me too.
And I will say for the donor conception groups, I've had clients that have attended both and have said really great things about it. So it's definitely worth checking out for sure.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. And we have another question. Thank you so much. Do you have any strategies for coping with pregnancy loss around the holiday season? I'm happy to chat a little bit about that. And Kate, if you have other things that you want to add as well. You know, again, I think just kind of this idea of checking in with yourself and kind of seeing what feels right in the moment and kind of just getting through the holidays day to day. You know, if you, for instance, have agreed to attend a get together with family and friends, and you know it's 5 o'clock and you're getting ready to walk out the door and you just don't feel comfortable, just calling it and just, you know, saying, you know what, this isn't the night for me. I need to stay in and I need some time to just kind of chill out and be alone, or be with my partner, be with somebody who can kind of listen and understand. You know, that's your, you know, you have the right to kind of check in and decide what you need in the moment. Groups certainly can be helpful. You know, I know that Resolve offers groups in that regard as well, around pregnancy loss. So that's something to consider. If maybe it's more helpful to connect with people who you're not familiar with, who are not family and friends, but you do want to talk about it. That can be an avenue there. I think for a lot of clients that I work with, staying busy, trying to do things that are tried and true, in terms of feeling good, staying busy, doing things that are positive and make you feel good. And one of those things, again, kind of coming up with a list and just having a checklist of things so that you don't even really have to think about it. You just kind of look at your list and you go. Kate, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, that is great advice. The one thing I would add that is not specific to the holiday season is something that I we experience loss, and I kind of wish that we had done this. So do as I say and not as I didn't do. But I think it's really nice to honor your loss in some way, no matter what stage of pregnancy it happened, or a loss is a loss for you, and I am sorry for your loss. And so I think even just planting something, or whatever's meaningful for you as a way to recognize this experience, I think can be really positive. And again, I kind of wish we had done something like that, because it's kind of a nice way to mark, the experience, which unfortunately is a challenging one. But otherwise, I just totally agree with all Alicia's lovely advice.
Yep. And Kate, you are totally right. I think I have definitely spoken with many, many people who have gone through this experience. And, one of the things that they'll often say is, what has made it particularly painful is that they can't often, or they don't often share it with other people. And so it's kind of
Right.
something that just goes, kind of under the radar, right? You go back to work the next day, life kind of just goes on as it normally would, even though something incredibly awful has just happened. And, like Kate said, it doesn't matter at what point in the pregnancy it happened, and it was real, and it's incredibly sad. So if there's a way to honor that and acknowledge that and kind of bring it to the light to say that this really did happen to me and I am really sad about it, I think for a lot of people that's helpful for them to kind of just have that real moment in time where you can kind of say out loud that this happened, and you honor it. I think that's a great idea, Kate. Um, so we have another question. Thank you so much. So the question is, normally I love Christmas and spend months planning Christmas activities and food. I am currently mid IVF cycle, and I feel like this year I've not been able to think or do anything other than fertility. How can I get my festive mojo back and re-enjoy the things I used to love? I think that's a great one. Kate, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just so, like hand on my heart, I just so hear what you're saying, that it starts to consume our lives. But I also think kind of like getting your holiday mojo back, which I love that expression. I don't want to be another stress either. So I would just say do what you can. I mean, really reflect on like what are all the things you typically do for Christmas, and which ones are like your very favorite ones, and make sure you do those. Like for us, we make cinnamon rolls on Christmas morning, and we try not to have them any other time of the year, partly to make them special on Christmas, and partly so we don't have heart attacks. We would have them every day if we could. So it's like for me, I think like, okay, the cinnamon rolls are really important. I'm going to make sure I buy those and have the ingredients for those in the refrigerator. Or like Alicia said, I love like seeing the crazy, like decked out houses with Christmas lights,
Mm,
and driving around and seeing those. And I really think people are going to go all out this year, and I am here for it. So
yeah.
I think like, so I don't know what your things are, but I would say, um, even if you can just have a few of those, I mean, you are still you. I so hear you that, you feel like you've lost yourself, and you've lost like your Christmas self in all of this, but you're still there. You're just focused on something else, and it's a pretty important something else. So I think don't put more pressure on yourself, but just find those ways that you can still celebrate, maybe new ways in some cases, and then find those very treasured things that you still want to make sure you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think allowing yourself to have a little bit of that, festive happiness and, doing something that you love, that's a great thing to already know that there are activities or foods or places that you like to go, that actually make you happy and feel good. Capitalize on that, use those things, because I would guess that once you start to do those things or, start to think more about those things, there will be a bit of a spillover effect. That doesn't mean that you can't think about the fertility process or your IVF cycle or how frustrated you are, right? Like you can hold emotions about the excitement of the season, and then you can also hold emotions about the frustration or sadness that you have about the infertility. But if you know that there are things that make you happy and give you just a little bit of light, I hope that you can tap into a little bit of that and give yourself a bit of a break and just enjoy, especially if it's a time of year that you love. Let's see, I think that's it for our questions. I'm happy to hang on for another minute or two in the event that another one pops in, but these are really good ones. Thank you guys for presenting them and asking.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I think that is it for the questions. They were fantastic. Thank you again for those of you who are wanting to participate via questions and check in with us. We very, very much appreciate it. And certainly, as you can see here up on the screen, there's multiple ways to get in touch with us. We're always happy to hear from you. If there's ever anything we can do to assist or support or direct you towards information that you need, don't ever hesitate to reach out. I don't know, Kate, if you have anything else to add in that regard.
No, I totally agree. And I should have put our email address here on the slide you're looking at right now, but it's just admin@resolvenewengland.org. But we're always on social media too, so feel free to message us there. We make some great friends there in social media land. So.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and happy holidays.
Same to you. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.